Welcome everybody to today's edition of the ElderFlow Microfluidics webinar. Today's topic will be on immunoassays and diagnostics. The presentation will be given to you by our research engineer Benjamin Garin. He will talk about recent discoveries, applications, and he will also present you some of his results that he obtained during his PhD thesis at the Sorbonne University. Just to let you know, if you require more information, for example, on this webinar or in general on microfluidics or our instruments, you can always visit our website or write us an email at contact@elderflow.com. For your information, this webinar will be finished with a Q&A session during which you can ask questions concerning this webinar or microfluidics in general. And with this, I would like to give over to my colleague Benjamin, and to you, I wish a nice webinar.
Thank you, Krista. Today we're going to talk about microfluidic immunoassay systems for diagnostic. First, I will introduce microfluidic technology and its advantages. Then I will talk about lab-on-a-chip immunoassay technologies. Then I will illustrate it by presenting my PhD thesis subject about an electromagnetic detection device. And finally, we will conclude. So first, microfluidics, it's using microelectronics fabrication technique to create microchannels. The advantages are decreasing the sample and reagent consumption, which therefore reduce the cost of any experiments. It shortens the time of analysis for the experiments too. And most of all, it's possible to run parallel analysis at the same time in a microfluidic chip. There are also several materials that you could use to do microfluidic chips with different advantages and drawbacks. And finally, in the microfluidic chip, the flow is laminar, which has some effects about the mixing, which presents some advantages and drawbacks too. There are already a lot of applications of microfluidic technologies that I will present briefly. So first, you can do chemistry in a microfluidic chip for very precise and controlled chemical reactions. You can do environmental monitoring to do, for example, water quality testing. You can do a lot of other stuff. But today we are going to talk about biomedical field, which is how to improve healthcare. So on the microfluidic chip, you can mimic the functionality of organs. It's called organ on a chip. You can do some whole blood separation to retrieve, for example, plasma from blood. But we are going to talk about point of care today, which is technology that you could use directly at the patient to do some tests. For example, glucose sensing. It already exists some testing that the patient can do himself to control his glucose rate. And today we are going to talk about lab-on-a-chip immunoassays. So it looks a bit like on this figure, when you put your sample at the entrance and have a signal read for an immunoassay. I will explain what it is. So first, during my PhD defense in 2019, I said that the increasing number of plane passengers could be a concern about increasing risk of pandemics. And obviously right now it's the COVID-19 crisis, so maybe I was onto something. So we really need a lab-on-a-chip, which is a microfluidic chip where you can do experiments outside of the lab to perform fast pathogen detection with low limit of detection, which is simple to use and cost effective. So what is an immunoassay? It's to detect a molecule or pathogen, for example, the coronavirus, using an antibody-antigen interaction. So in an immunoassay system, you've got an analyte you want to detect, which bind to a sensory layer, and a transducer create a signal when it happens. So in our case, the analyte is a pathogen we want to detect. The sensory layer is composed of antibodies specific to the pathogen we want to detect. And we have different kind of transducers that I'm going to present that can create an electrical signal from this interaction. So for example, with an optical biosensor, we have a primary antibody, which is a bioreceptor, which is specific to the antigen we want to to detect, the antigen or pathogen will stick to it. And then we will inject in the system a secondary antibody with a marker, for example, which will create an optical signal. This configuration is called a sandwich immunoassay. So there are different kinds of pathogen sensing methods using antibodies, like optical detection methods, electrochemical detection methods, mechanical detection methods, and finally, magnetic detection methods. I will present them briefly. So first, the optical detection method is the most widely used. The principle is to detect a change in light properties when we have interaction between the antibody and the analyte, so the pathogen. There are several kinds that already exist, so methods, so colorimetric, fluorescent, etc. It's usually cheap, rapid, and sensitive, but it's difficult to have a quantitative result and to integrate it in some lab-on-chips. Colorimetric biosensors are already largely used. For example, it's the same principle with pregnancy tests. Like on this figure, you put your sample in the sample pad at the left of the device, and the capillary force will bring the sample across the device. And if the pathogen is present in the sample, the test line will appear by creating this antibody-antigen sandwich configuration. The control line always appears if the sample reach it, because it doesn't need the antigen to create the line. So if you have both lines during a test, it means that the antigen is in your sample. Then we've got the electrochemical biodetection method, which measure electrical parameters during the experiment to see if there is a change. If your antibody and we interact with the antigen, you will see a difference in specific electrical parameters. So it can be the conductivity, the potential, etc. It's usually cost-effective and robust, but it still lacks a bit of reproducibility. But there's still some research about this method. Then you've got the mechanical biodetection method. So there are two different kinds, the QCM, quartz crystal microbalance, and cantilevers. On this figure, you can see a cantilever. If the analyte is present in our sample, it will bend the cantilever when it will stick to the antibody. And you can measure this bending using a laser. It's sensitive, but it's difficult to integrate in a small device, lab-on-chip device. And finally, I will present magnetic detection method that I used during my PhD. So there are different kinds. We used the frequency mixing technique during my PhD project to detect our analyte. It usually has a good sensitivity and relatively cheap. And the principle is to create, again, this sandwich configuration with the primary antibody on the surface, and the antigen will bind to it. But this time, instead of, for example, an optical marker on the secondary antibody, we use a magnetic nanoparticle that we can detect using a magnetic field. So we have got two different situations. If the pathogen is in our sample during the test, we will create this sandwich configuration, and we will have some magnetic nanoparticle in our system that we can measure by applying a magnetic field. But if the sample is not contaminated, the magnetic nanoparticle won't stick to the surface and will be washed away from the system, and the detection will be negative. So the aim of my PhD was to use this method to create an integrated device and miniaturized that needs small sample, that gives fast results, that is cost effective, etc. So we created a prototype. So you can see some coils, planar coils that we use to create and measure the magnetic fields. That surround a microfluidic channel that you can see as a serpentine geometry. And in this microfluidic channel, we wanted to create the immunoassay. So to do that, we use the pressure control pump to bring our reagents and sample to our microfluidic channel. So the pressure control pump rides the pressure in our reservoirs that will push the liquid through our microfluidic channel. First, we used some syringe pumps, but it was not super convenient, and it has a pulsatile flow, which made the experiment not very reproducible. We used this configuration to test different kind of microfluidic channel geometries. So you can see the first one is close to the coil geometry, and the second one has pillars to improve the surface to volume ratio. And we tested our prototype with different concentration of magnetic nanoparticles, and we had a good linearity in our results, which is good, and we had also a low limit of detection. So this test was with magnetic nanoparticles only in our reservoir. So then we tried to graft some antibodies on our microfluidic channel. So we created a chemical protocol to do that and to have the antibodies paratops on top to make it as active as possible. So a few key points of this webinar. We really need to create a new lab-on-a-chip immunoassay device to prevent any future crisis like the one we had with the COVID-19 outbreak. Hopefully we can do that because we have a lot of different biosensor technologies available with different advantages and drawbacks. Microfluidics is very useful for all these different methods because it has a lot of advantages, like low volume needed to do the experiments, and it's easy to create point-of-care device that can have good portability. And to test the prototypes of these devices, you need some precise instruments that can create some reproducible experiments. You can have more information about all these topics on our websites or by downloading our lab-on-a-chip white paper. Thank you for your attention, and back to you, Krista.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for this very nice webinar. Everybody is now invited to ask their questions, so please just type them into the conversation field of Zoom, and then we will try to answer them. For this, Benjamin will be joined by our colleague Romain, and together they will answer all of the questions. And should something remain unanswered or you have additional questions, just drop us an email at contact@elveflow.com. And with this, I will switch over, and I wish you from my side a nice evening.
Hi everyone, we've met a couple of times already, so for the ones who know me, hi again. So first question, I think Benjamin is going to answer. So may I ask a question about what are the main challenges and bottleneck for immunoassay in microfluidic device?
Yes, it's a very good question. I think it really depends on the methods you want to use to do your device. For example, with magnetic nanoparticles, it's a colloidal stability, which means that you want your nanoparticles to be alone in your volume, but there's some tendencies of them getting stuck together and creating some structures, and you don't want that. So it's this kind of challenge you have to overcome to create a good detection which is reproducible. But I'm not sure about the other methods. I think each method has its own drawback. For example, the cantilever has to have very dry conditions. So it depends on the method, actually.
So hi, Dr. Benjamin, a great talk. I was wondering how you handled sample preparation for your assays.
I only used actually my nanoparticles, magnetic nanoparticles. So it was another lab who created them. And then when I got them, I had to mix them so the colloidal stability is kept, and just put them in the reservoir and do my tests. For antibodies, I was not in the biology lab, so we couldn't use them directly in our lab. But I think so. I think that with biological entities, you have to respect some rules. So I'm not sure about sample preparation in that case.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the interesting talk. I would like to know which material was used to manufacture the microfluidic system you presented.
Very good question. Actually, first we used the PDMS, which is more convenient for prototype because it's very easy to manufacture and to customize. But we wanted to create a device that could be in the future industrialized. And then for this PDMS is not compatible because you can't do hot embossing and injection molding, which you need to create a lot of devices. So we did some studies about other materials like PMMA and COC, which are PMMA is quite common material for microfluidic too. COC it's a bit new. But it's a very interesting topic. Actually, when you create a new lab on chip, you should think of three main things. The first one is the method that I presented. The second one is the material you want to use with different advantages and drawbacks. And the third one is which manufacture. How do you want to manufacture your chips and or device? And you need to think about these three things when you want to create a new device, because if you forgot one of them, maybe you will have some issues at some point.
Right. Hi, I'm wondering about the different application until now. What about the feasibility in reproduction field?
Reproduction field? I'm not sure about this one.
Well, I think the pregnancy tests are actually a good example of what a good application for microfluidics as you do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's already exists and commercially available on the market. But there are lots of different applications. I talked about immunoassays for diagnostics, but you could use immunoassays also for water quality, contamination, environmental monitoring too. So there's a lot of different applications. It's a very important and interesting subject.
See one more question. Did you switch from step-having biotin interactions to covalent linkage of the primary antibodies? I'm not sure I understood that part.
Oh, okay. We had I had some interactions with the chemistry lab, and we worked a lot about this. Actually, the primary antibody, it's chemistry, I'm not sure everybody will follow, but for the primary antibody, we use covalent linkage, we try to do it. But for the secondary antibody, to bind them with the magnetic nanoparticles, we were thinking about streptavidin biotin interactions, and it was another lab who wanted to do this part of the project. I was more about the chemical reactions for the primary antibodies binding.
Okay. And again, how were you able to functionalize your flow channels? Can you explain this on the slide? So I guess more on the more practical aspect.
Yeah, the chemical reaction is super specific. I can't remember the protocol like super precisely. I'm not sure it will. It's super interesting for everybody to go into details about that. But you can check my PhD thesis. It's on ResearchGate if you want the precise protocol.
So a couple more questions. So thank you for a previous answer. I wonder how the sample stream is controlled. Is it a continuous flow or a flow and stop control stream?
It's the second one. So to do the test, it was a rapid test, but with continuous flow, we saw that we had some stability issues. Maybe it's something in the future that will be solved, but for now it's flow, stop the flow, then do the measurement, and then start the flow again. The measurement is quite fast, so it's not a big issue.
Well, I guess that's where the pressure-driven flow control becomes handy, because typically with syringe pump you have quite long response time,
yeah,
and quite large instability, so reproducibility is not as good, and that's why you decided to swap to pressure-driven.
Exactly, and also because we were afraid that, for example, the pillar channel was going to create some clots that could break the microfluidic chips, so we decided to go with pressure control pumps.
All right, cool. I think there was one last question from Soren. How did you detect the reading in case of specific antigen-antibody reaction?
How did you detect the reading?
Using the magnetic field, I guess.
Yes, it was electrical reading, but actually we had only results for now with only the microfluidic, the magnetic nanoparticles. We didn't try yet with the full sandwich configuration, but yes, to detect magnetic nanoparticles, we use the frequency mixing technique that I didn't go into details because it's quite complicated electromagnetic stuff too. But yeah, it's a magnetic field that can detect nanoparticles, to make it simple.
So I guess one last question from Jorge. In the system you're presenting, how long does a detection assay take?
So it was a prototype, but when everything went well, it was quite fast, like less than 10 minutes for all the steps. So that's why it could be super important in case of future virus outbreaks and stuff like that. It's because the results is fast to get. So it's a promising technology to tackle this kind of crisis.
All right. One last question, I guess we're gonna take. How much sample do you need to take for the test?
That's one of the main advantages of microfluidics. It's that you only need a few microliters of sample that can be super expensive. For example, the antibodies can be super expensive. So it's good to use microfluidics for immunoassays, obviously, because you really need low volumes.
All right, awesome. And just one last question for the context, because that's kind of interesting. Can we use such a system to diagnose COVID-19?
Not yet, because it's still in research states. So it's not for everybody yet. It's not finished actually. So there's still some work to do. Maybe before the end of the crisis, one of the methods I presented is going to appear in the market. But the system I presented is not ready for use for now.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Benjamin, for your time. I think there is no more questions. So if you guys have any more questions or anything like this, you can drop us an email at any time at contact@lvflow.com. And also remember that next week we'll be at Microtas online, and you can also reach out to us there. So have a good day, and thank you very much for your time again.
Thank you.
Bye.